Cassandraco by jtimu. Harry Potter was going to die in 6 hours. As far as Draco was concerned, that wasn't nearly soon enough. "This is aura cruelty," Draco announced, from where he was sitting on the rough concrete floor. He managed to slide himself backwards just enough to rest his shoulders against the wall. The position tugged uncomfortably on his wrists, bound at the small of his back. "Not an aura," Potter replied. He had his back to Draco, and was tracing the edge of a doorway with the tip of his wand. They were in what Draco could only assume was a warehouse. It had tall walls with peeling paint, and one wall was made of small paned windows. Several of them were broken or missing, and there were chunks of glass on the floor near him. He eyed them with distaste. Potter was opposite to him, near an interior wall. It was featureless, with dingy gray paint and a metal door. Draco could see the magical residue over it. It phased into existence under every pass of Potter's wand and then faded away in dimming trail of runes. "Whatever you are, I'll be filing a complaint." Draco's right shoulder ached where Potter had slammed him into the wall. In retrospect, wandering into the room unannounced hadn't been the best idea. In his defense, he hadn't had a lot of time to develop a plan. Potter turned from the fading runes and looked at him. "Stop moving." "Let me go," Draco countered, wiggling closer to the wall to prove his point. "You've got my wand. What am I gonna do?" Potter didn't respond, but moved on to another section of the wall near the door. A new section of runes sparked into view and popped with a sound like hail on a tin roof. "Whatever you're planning," Potter said, after he finished an inspection of the other doors, the wall of windows, and for some reason the seam between the floor and the wall, "you won't get away with it." Draco gritted his teeth together and took a deep breath. "You had better hoped I do, actually, seeing as I'm trying to save your life, you half-witted walnut." Potter crouched on his haunches. He was just out of kicking range. Draco tried anyway, but only succeeded in slamming his heel into the floor. It hurt. "How did you find me?" Draco squinted at him. "Is it hearing damage, or do you not listen on purpose? What part of Seer doesn't make sense to you?" "You're not one." Draco actually laughed at that. It came out ragged and choking. "Oh, go fuck yourself," he said, and then, "What would you know anyway?" Potter crossed his arms. "You're not registered Seer." Draco rolled his eyes. If his arms had been free, he'd have crossed them in return. He settled for hitching up one knee. "Because I'm not an idiot. No one registers for those things. Wasn't your father an unregistered animagus? And how many werewolves do you think march into the ministry and slap their name down on that list? Do you even know what they do to seers? My fingers are going numb. Your incarcerus is too tight." "Sit still," Potter said, and he released the binds. Draco sat obediently and let Potter reposition his hands in front and rebind them. He winced as he moved his arm, and only had to exaggerate a little for effect. The knots were still too tight for him to squirm out of, but at least he could move well enough to hold a wand and cast. That would be important. Potter cast a sticking charm on Draco. It was the kind of minor thing that parents use to keep children from falling from brooms, and only served to keep Draco from shuffling out of his position. "This is undignified," Draco said. Potter ignored him. So Draco tried, after some time had passed, and Potter had moved on to tracing sigils into the exterior door. It was a repeating series of sharp angles, each one not quite the same as the one before. They reminded him of homework that he'd used to copy off Theo at school. "Don't you want to know what happens next?" "I know what happens next." "Oh?" The runes had shifted to an alarming shade of magenta. Potter tapped at them with his wand, frowning slightly. Yeah, he said, without turning around. I sort this out, and I drop you over at the DMLE, where you're not my problem anymore. Wrong, actually. Draco picked at the rope around his wrist half-heartedly until Potter noticed and spelled them tight again. If you want to tie me up, you just need to ask. He put a little sway in his voice. Potter didn't rise to the bait. He settled in to watch Potter work, not that he had much choice in the matter. The man was almost tolerable when he wasn't actively menacing. He'd grown taller since they last ran into each other. Draco had barely been 18 at the time, withered from a year in Azkaban. Potter had been a shrinking, meek thing, looking as though he were on trial instead of Draco. Even that hadn't hidden the power that flowed off of him. There was nothing shrinking about him now. The beard was new, as was the hair, that swept back into a low ponytail at the nape of his neck. He had on slouchy utilitarian pants, with too many pockets and a black shirt. Draco's wand stuck out of a leather holster strapped on his thigh. All of him gave the impression of spare efficiency. The runes fizzled out and the door swung open. A wave of stale air came with it, thick with dust. "What's in there?" Draco asked. "None yet." "Are you 5 years old? Actually, Potter, this is a serious question." He tried to wriggle forward, but was held fast by the sticking charm. Potter was exploring the room now. He wandered out of Draco's sight and back again. It didn't take long. Draco could see the back of the room from where he sat. It wasn't deep. "Where is it, Malfoy? What did you do?" "Potter," Draco said, with as much sincerity as he could put into the words, "I do not give two flying fucks what's supposed to be in that room. I haven't done anything. If you stay here, you're going to die. Possibly we both will. Honestly, I don't know why I bothered. Let me go now, and I'll leave you to it. You might not have an aversion to dying horribly, but I do." Potter stepped out of the revealed chamber and frowned at Draco. There was a lecture coming. Draco could feel it. It would be unpleasant and long. He'd whack his finger at Draco about lying and how he wasn't actually a seer, no matter that Draco had woken up this morning to an unpleasant vision of a sightless green eyes and truly extraordinary amount of blood. There would be shouting, probably from both sides. He hadn't seen it, but some things you don't need magic to foretell. It was almost a relief when the room went black. For someone who had spent his formative years living in a literal dungeon, Draco was not fond of the dark. It brought to mind things that were better left unexplored. Overlarge snakes crawling through the walls of his home, masked figures that he turned corner to avoid. His breath caught in his throat and stayed there. "Potter." It came out as a whisper. There wasn't any reason to whisper. The light flashed back into place, brighter than before. With it, Draco could make out two important pieces of information. First, the outside windows had sealed shut. They were opaque, with milky white protective wards. Second, there was someone trying to get in. "What did you do?" Potter was in his face, kneeling on the ground in front of Draco. His wand hand was steady, and the tip was only inches from Draco's forehead. "I tried to get you to leave," Draco said. He hadn't expected it to work, not really. Potter had always been stubborn, and Draco hadn't done much of anything to redeem his image in the years since the war. They had run into each other on occasion. Draco snipped at him to get a cheap rise, and Potter stormed away, flushed and angry. Most people wouldn't have believed him. He had to try. It was sinking in now how poorly thought out this plan was. He hadn't stopped to think about it this morning. He'd woken up with the vision fresh behind his eyes. The red was so vibrant that he could almost smell the copper, though that might have been from where he had bitten his lip. His breathing came faster. There wasn't enough air, or it was too thin. He didn't notice the ropes vanish, and then Potter was kneeling beside him. He smelled like wood smoke. In the concrete and the glass. Draco, wanted to laugh as how badly he wanted to cry. What's wrong? What's wrong? Draco's voice came out rough. What's wrong? I've been telling you what's wrong for the better part of 2 hours. I don't even know what time it is anymore. Potter cast a tempest and the nevers hovered in the air. That doesn't help, actually, Draco admitted. I don't know what time it happens. I assumed it was after dark because the windows were dark, but now they turned together to look. The pale milk color had faded into a dove gray. There was another explosive clang. The door shifted under the onslaught. If I find out you've been lying to me, you'll what? Draco smiled with all his teeth. Kill me? I doubt I'll be able to talk to myself out of whatever mess you're in. No, Potter agreed. Draco gave himself 5 seconds to panic. It was 5 seconds of deep breaths in and out. 5 clenches of his hand. 5 perfect semicircles cut into his palm. Right, he said, pushing to his feet. Is there a way out? No. Great. Fabulous. Delightful. Potter crossed his arms over his chest. His wand was still vaguely pointed in Draco's direction. What do you know? Bang. Another thud. Deeper. Had they chosen a different spell to try? In general or specifically? Either way, not much. What are you even looking for? Potter's lips pressed together. I can't tell you that. I don't actually care, Draco said, and turned to look in the room. It hadn't changed since last he looked. We need to get out of here, or hide. Is there backup coming? What are you if you're not an Auror? The door shuttered again, and Draco took an involuntary step backwards. It's 6 inches thick, Potter said, and I warded it after you showed up. Nothing is getting through that door. Bang. A shower of dust shivered free from the doorframe. How thick is the wall? The dawning realization was obvious on Potter's face. His eyes widened slightly, his eyebrows raised. A line formed in the center of his forehead. Fuck. The door that Potter had spent so long trying to open was closed again. Potter had slammed it shut, and set about casting a series of complicated spells that overlaid the metal in the shining lines. Draco slouched against the wall, across from him. Unfortunately, this only put him a few scant steps away. It wasn't much more than a closet. Flat gray walls and a single metal chair in the corner. He walked from one side to the other in 5 strides, across in 3, then again, and again. Stop pacing, Potter muttered. He was doing something complicated and magical and entirely outside of Draco's current concern. He snagged his wand out of Potter's holster on the next pass, and Potter didn't stop him. Why are you here? Draco asked, after another span of time had passed. Shouldn't you know that? Draco decided, against his natural instincts, to take the question in good faith. Visions don't work that way. I see something. A moment. Like a photograph. All you get is the moment, and the reset. And you saw you, Draco said, frowning. Dead. Yes. Potter leaned back against the wall, shoulders flat against the metal. He sucked in a deep breath. Now that he'd stopped, Draco could see the signs of exhaustion. Under his eyes, the skin had gone almost purple. His hand trembled over his wand. Magical exhaustion, Draco said, and Potter nodded. I was meant to be out by now, he said. I would have been. But you were interrupted, Draco said. Slowly. I delayed you. The room was smaller, the ceiling closing in on him. He sank down to sit with his arms tucked around his knees. What else did you see? This building, Draco said, recalling the vision to mind. It was still fresh and blinked back into view with just a nudge. It happens out there. The same concrete, broken glass, spell residue. Who are you hiding from? And I die? Unless you've got more blood in your body than the average wizard. When you get these visions, Potter sounded skeptical still. Draco tried not to be annoyed and failed. Can you change them? Surely you, of all people, know something about prophecy. There was another series of bangs from outside the room, and the distinct sound of a wall crumbling. The clang of metal on concrete. Nothing is fixed until it has happened. I see possibilities. Things that are likely. Last week I saw myself stubbing my toe on the dining table. I avoided that room for a week. Ran in to catch the cat and bam! That one was fixed. You can tell sometimes which ones you can avoid. This one is, well, there's a chance. I've got backup, Potter said. He pulled his lip in between his teeth and worried at it. They'll show if I don't check in within 6 hours. It's been 4. It's 2 more hours. What are you here for? Fuck if I know, Potter said, with evident frustration. It was the most emotion Draco had seen out of him since he'd waltzed through the door and startled him into response. I was sent to pick up a potential asset. There was, you'll love this, a prophecy. Some sort of tool that we need to keep out of the wrong hands. But there's nothing here, he snarled, gesturing around the room. It's empty. Nothing magical, nothing at all. Just us, Draco said, and swallowed. His hands, where they clutched at the fabric of his trousers, were white at the knuckles. Just you. And me. I hate prophecy, Potter said quietly. Things happened rather quickly after that. In the way that time passed when you were excited or scared. An entire hour slipped out of his grasp in the space of a moment, and the next seconds dilated into a month, a year, an eternity. His wand was heavy in his hand as they watched the last shining traces of Potter's wars unravel. By the time Potter's backup arrived, it would be long over. Potter would be dead, and Draco would be as good as. Secreted away somewhere hidden in a corner of the wizarding world, locked in a cell or trapped in a prison of his own mind. He'd seen some of the things they do to seers, the real ones. He'd sworn it would never happen to him. He eyed his wand curiously, tilted it to and fro, considering the gently glowing tip. Tell me again, Potter said. Death, Draco said, tonelessly. Despair. We've been through it. Shake it again and you'll just be playing with it. Potter snorted. Fine. Tell me something else. Draco flicked another lumos into the corner of the room. It lit Potter in a bright, clear light, highlighting the green of his eyes. A small smile twisted the corner of his mouth. The full force of Harry Potter's attention was a bold, remarkable thing. Draco let himself enjoy it, just a little. He leaned back, kicking his feet out from in front of him, his toes curled under the polished leather. My father used to buy peacocks from a Muggle source. The white ones? He used to pretend they were magical. Potter snorted again. He brought his hand up to cover his mouth. What? He gasped. And then, why? Draco shrugged, relaxing slightly. Potter was close to him, near enough to touch him if he stretched his hand out a little. His fingertips left trails on the dusty floor. I suppose the regular ones were too plebeian. Potter was smiling now. I wondered, your whole family was so blonde. And the peacocks too? Draco leaned in and spoke directly into Potter's ear. My mother dyed her hair. Potter shifted away enough to look at Draco straight in the eye. They were so close that Draco couldn't see the dark flecks and that ringed his irises. She didn't. Not a word of a lie. His eyes were sparkling, all that green glimmering in the fading light. And you? You'll never know. Another trail of lights disappeared. They watched it go, flickering out piece by piece. Potter cast half-heartedly, but the wards only pulsed once, weakly, and then settled back into their slow decline. Draco didn't bother. Potter had tried to teach him the spell, but it was like casting underwater, the movements unfamiliar and syrupy. Just another minute now. Draco hummed vaguely. He'd been running through the vision over and over, trying to find the cracks that where the pieces came together. Potter, on the floor, glassy-eyed, red footprints around him. He himself was nowhere to be seen, no matter how he stretched the vision, until the space behind his eyes went taut and painful. Usually he could force a vision. Today there was nothing. Only the certainty of that vision, and nothing more. No sign of tomorrow or next year. No preview of Pansy's birthday gift or a ruined ending of his new book. He tried not to think about what that meant. It was almost a relief when the door finally crumbled. They'd transmuted the metal into rock, finally, and had broken down into a pile of gravel. Potter's spell took the first one down. It wasn't Expelliarmus, but his magic was drained, and the spell glanced off the man's shoulder. But with enough force to knock him down backwards. The doorway was briefly clear, and Draco could see the array outside. There was at least 6, possibly more. One of them was talking over his shoulder to someone out of sight. Potter was squaring up to cast again, but his wand held steady. He went still at the touch of Draco's hand on his shoulder, the tap of his wand on Potter's temple. "Sit down," Draco suggested. "I knew I shouldn't trust you." "No, probably not," Draco agreed. The next of the intruders was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and a foreign lilt to her accent. She stepped over the pile of rubble in heavy boots, dragonhide, expensive. "Kill him then," she said. She barely looked at Potter. "What's he to us?" Potter made a strangled noise. "The building is surrounded," he said. Even wandless, magically drained and exhausted, there was authority to his voice. "The Unspeakables will be here soon." "He's lying," Draco said. "Don't kill him. I'll come with you." The woman considered him for a long moment. The vision that had been floating behind his eyes blurred. There was Potter, bloodless on the floor. There was Potter, gasping for breath under a spell. There again was Potter, glaring at him, his mouth stuffed with a cloth gag. "No," she said, and the vision rebounded like a snapped string, hard enough to sting. "Right," he said and sighed. "This is such a cliché." The spell was fizzy on his tongue, and then sharp against his skin. He held as still as he could, but there was still a slow, warm drip down his neck, where the tip of the wand rested. The woman's mouth pursued unpleasantly. "That won't get you anywhere." "On the contrary, it won't get you anywhere. Not with me, at any rate. Potter, stop gaping. You look like a fish." "What are you doing?" Potter hissed it, as though it weren't obvious to anyone with 2 nearly functioning eyes and a set of glasses. "What I came here to do," Draco said. He wished it had come out more heroic and less desperate, but times were what they were. Several more people filtered into the room. Draco flinched at one of them as he raised the wand, and another warm trickled down his collar. "Stop that, you idiot!" the woman snapped, and the man dropped his wand. Draco's heart was pounding in his chest, rabbit fast. Everyone was watching him as though they could see it, as though they could see right through him. "Draco," Potter said, low and urgent. Draco ignored him. "You'll let him go," Draco said, mustering every scrap of authority he had. "You'll let him go, and I'll come with you. He was here for me, too. I'm very popular today." The woman scoffed. "Or what? You'll kill yourself? Leave the dramatics." "Draco," Potter said again. He was tilting his head awkwardly. Draco ignored him. "Yes," he said. She flung her hands in the air, palms outward. The language she spoke wasn't one that Draco recognized, but he knew what exasperation sounded like. "He lives, then." Draco let them take the wand from him, his and Potter's. They bound his hands harder than Potter had, and he stumbled as he crossed the threshold back into the larger room outside. It was always disorientating to see a vision come to life. There were the windows, entirely black. There were the same walls, the rubble where the door had been, and the smudged footsteps in the dust. But the floor was clear, and Potter was safe. Potter landed on his knees next to Draco, shoved by a thick hand in the back. There was anticipation in his eyes, and he turned to look at Draco with an almost apologetic expression. It was entirely out of place with the wand at the back of his neck. Kill him. There was a hand on Draco's collar, and the cloth gag into his throat as he tried to shove his way forward. It was for nothing. He couldn't have let it been for nothing. His feet slipped on the slick concrete, and the hand yanked him backwards. He tripped and fell, landing hard against a body behind him. Potter looked over at him. He smiled, and then the windows blew inward. Draco sat on the edge of a conjured bench. Between his cupped hands he held a shallow bowl of murky green liquid. He sniffed it carefully. "Drink it," Potter said, from next to him. He took a demonstrative sip of his own potion, then pulled the bowl out of Draco's hands and replaced it with his own. "It's a standard restorative drop. Not poisoned, not true serum. Unless only mine is. Do you want to switch back?" "No." Draco took a petulant sip. He was pleased to find that it had a light, citrus tang to it. "My name is Neville Longbottom," he tried. Next to him, Potter huffed. He had already finished half his bowl. "Potter," a voice called from across the room. A tall woman with shockingly yellow hair was walking towards him. Potter waved at her, nearly upsetting the bowl now balanced on his knee. "Mission was a failure, I'm afraid," Potter said, twisting his mouth slightly. "Didn't find anything." "And him?" Potter looked at Draco as though he'd forgotten he was there. "Him?" he asked. Draco's throat went tight. His blood rushed to his face. "They were looking for a seer. Malfoy couldn't see his way out of a paper bag. Someone else sent him. Lucky they did. You caught the unwarded magic?" Sloppy to send someone with an undisguised magical signature. She turned to Draco and looked him over, taking in, Draco was sure, the dust covering his trousers and the black ink on his forearm. She sniffed dismissively. "Is that true?" Draco couldn't do anything but nod. His throat was still tight to speak. Potter was very deliberately not looking at him. "Do you remember who sent you?" "No, There was a warning prickle in his throat. "I think I was obliviated," he said, weakly. "I don't remember how I got there." "We'll wipe him later," she said, turning to Potter. "I've got it," Potter said. He pushed himself upright and laid his bowl down on the floor where he'd been sitting. "I'll take him to Mungo's first." "Do it," she said, and walked away. "Come on," Potter said, and pulled Draco to his feet. The air outside was chill and damp. Everything smelled of rain and mist and the lingering charred smell of magic. Draco tried to apparate when Potter's back was turned and hit a wall of magic that jarred his teeth to his head. "The area's under lockdown," Potter said. "I'll apparate you out." "Like hell you will," Draco hissed and yanked his arm back. "What are you planning? What did you—" His throat went tight again. He lifted his hand to it. He could feel a tingle of magic under his fingers. "A liar," he mouthed, and Potter shrugged. "We're going to Mungo's," Potter said, and moved snake fast. When they landed, Draco stepped away backwards, already reaching for his wand. "I don't need a healer," he said, brandishing it out in front of him. Potter raised his hands to shoulder height. "I don't need help. I don't want to be obliviated." "Right," Potter agreed. He raised an eyebrow. "So I'll be leaving now. No one take forms, no memory charms." "If you like," Potter said, agreeably. Draco tried to apparate and hit a set of wards even firmer than the ones at the warehouse. "Let me," he spun around to argue with whoever was closest. They weren't in Mungo's. Instead of the skin-tingling antiseptic healing spells, there was a comfortable hum of background magic. Instead of blaring white, it was soft and comfortable. "Where are we?" "Mine," Potter said, and walked away. Draco followed. "Why am I in your home, Potter?" The kitchen was small, cluttered affair. Teacups stacked themselves on top of a counter at Potter's warning look, and the window looked into a messy garden. Potter leaned one hip against the butcher block counter. "Would you prefer to be at Mungo's?" "I would prefer to be at home," Draco said the words carefully. "I would prefer for none of this to have happened at all. I would prefer for you to tell me why you lied." Potter jerked a thumb over his shoulder. "Door's that way. I don't work with time. I can tell them the truth if you like. You don't seem eager to have your secrets get out." Draco sat heavily on a stool. "So now what?" "I was going to give you a choice." "What's that?" "You can obliviate me," Potter said, nodding towards Draco's wand. "Wipe the knowledge from my mind." "Carefully," he added, with a look of alarm on Draco's raised hand. "Or?" Potter shrugged. It was a studied movement that aimed at nonchalance and missed by a mile. "You're not terrible, you know." "Thank you, I am aware." "I was wondering," Potter said, rolling his eyes, "if you could see what you're doing soon. This weekend, maybe." "Are you—" Potter went red. Maybe the obliviation was a better choice. "No," Draco said, for what must have been the 9th time in the few hours. He cocked his head, and Potter looked down at his feet. It was the first sign of anything other than surety that Draco had seen him all day. It was oddly appealing. "Go on. It's your turn to prophecy. Tell me what happens on Saturday, around 7. "Dinner, drinks," Potter shrugged. "Alternative uses of incarcerus." It was Draco's turn to blush, and he did so. "Bold, Potter. You started it. And if I were to agree to this date—" "I'll pay," Potter offered, with a sidelong grin. "I'll pick you up and return you with your virtue intact, if that's what you want." "And why now?" Potter shrugged again. It was loose, reckless motion. He was still covered in dust, and there was a thin scrape of blood across his temple down to his jaw. It needed healing. He needed healing. He didn't look like a man who had just faced his own morality and walked away. He looked like danger and sex, but his voice, when he spoke, was soft and introspective. "I'm not a seer," he said, as he stepped closer, and lifted his hand to cup Draco's chin. "But I can see the potential when it shows up and kicks me in the shin." Draco blinked. His vision was sharp behind his eyes, and lingered on the back of his eyelids. It had flashed behind his eyes sooner than Potter's hand touched his skin, and he wanted to see it again. "All right," he said, as the image sharpened, curled like a pleasant cat. "I'll go on this date with you, and if it doesn't work out—" He had to say it. He could feel it in his bones, in a visceral way that was entirely unlike most of them. It didn't matter what Potter said next. He knew that, too, with the same deep certainty that he had when he woken up this morning, and he knew he had to try, that there was a chance to avert what he'd seen, even though he'd never managed it before. Prophecy was a curse most of the time, but sometimes, occasionally, it could be a gift.